Good day, listeners, particularly my students of Geography Department, Kogi State University, Aniba, now Prince Albert University, Aniba. Let me happily welcome you on platform to my maiden series of lectures on Geography 437, titled Ecology of Natural Resources. And the unit title in this program shall be Land Resources. Land resources. So let me intimate you before we start that I have tried to access the Zoom platform and the Google Classroom platform, but unfortunately, because of the fluctuations in the weather network, it has been very difficult to access it. That's why I have taken this alternative step to use the video coverage so that we are not let out entirely in grasping what is necessary for us at this moment. So you just manage with me for now. But meanwhile, the university is making effort. They are putting up effort to ensure that we have a stable network and a standard network, very strong one, that by the time you click, things will go on well. So let me say congratulations in advance. Now, this course, Ecology of Natural Resources, is very familiar with us, and we started with it last time during the conventional lecture system. And we have been introduced to the concept of ecology and that of natural resources. See, we don't need to bother ourselves much in going back to discuss the ecology as a concept. But let me remind us, because as long we have access to our books, that ecology is about the study of the environment, the physical environment, the human environment, and the interaction these environments have with with space, the landscape. So human beings cannot live in isolation. There must be an intricate relationship with the physical environment. The physical environment is so important to us because they are attached to it numerous values which we geographers are very much interested in discussing. So the environment of land, the physical component of the environment, is so important to us in various ways. And this is what we are asked to study within this short period. So just listen very carefully, and by the grace of God, you will be able to encode enough for your because of the utility value attached to it. And I hope you enjoy it. So land resources in this discussion is about the land. It's about the earth, your lithosphere. It's about the soil. It's about the ground on where you live. The ground, the earth, the lithosphere, whichever way you call it, they all constitute what we call the land. So when we talk about the land, we're not talking about the physical land alone, containing the soil. It is about the land and all the components of the environment that are embedded in the land, including the macro and microorganisms of the land in the soil. So the land, vegetation, water, climate, these are the major physical components of the environment. They are very much intricately related, and their relationship is fundamental to the development of ecology, to the study of ecology. They are fundamental to human existence. And because of this attachment, and because of this relationship as well, geographers who are the custodians of the environment, who are masters of the environment, delve into this study because of the relevance it has in the growth and development of human existence. So, and that is why they are important. So land, the word land has a meaning with many interpretations. The word land could also mean largely the earth, as I have mentioned. It can be called the ground, the lithosphere. That is the upper layer of the earth crust. That's when we're talking about the structure of the earth. We mentioned the lithosphere. So the lithographic study of the earth is as important as studying climate. It's as important as studying the vegetation. It's as important as studying human livelihood. Lithoclimatological relevance of the land, the hydrological relevance of the land, as well as anthropogenic relevance of the land have been taken care of in previous studies by experts in the field of geology, in the field of geography, in the field of hydrology, in the field of geomorphology, and a host of other fields of geography. And they try to derive from their study a number of importance that are attached to the environment. So these activities that are relevant and which we consider the land as very important as a component of the physical ecosystem include farming, construction, such as road construction, bridge construction, building construction, infrastructural development, like power installation, electricity generation, irrigation systems, and networks of roads, etc. They culminate in the services of the land to humankind, irrespective of the form they take. All these activities take place on land, not in the air. Equally to the resources being put into use are the products derived from the land. What are these resources? The mineral resources, organic and inorganic substances of the soil, the organisms, and their derivatives. Land resource is another most vital resource. Hence, it is used for the production of crops and other biological components or materials required for food, required for fodder, animals, required for medicine, medicinal herbs, fiber, etc. The volume of production depends largely on the extent and the yield capacity of the cultivable land. That is when we talk about the utility value of the land. The major land use categories in this study we are going to look at include the cultivated land, the forest land, non-agricultural land, pasture land, fallow land. These are the 5 major categories we are going to look at. There may be other categories such as engineering, industrial land, talk about political, so cultural or recreational lands, and so on and so forth. But these 5 are most relevant to us as geographers because of the interpretation they have to the environmental sustainability, the interpretation they have to services rendered by the environment to us. And this environment we are particular about is the land. So now, the forest land. The forest land refers to an area that is occupied with the collection of trees and covers a relatively large part of the earth. The forest land mostly are areas of active lumbering and wood harvesting. You know, when we talk about trees, we are talking about plants with higher configuration. The physiognomies of trees differ from those of the shrubs, the herbs, the creepers, and other plant species, because plants have taproots and they live with large canopies, especially in the tropical regions of the world. They have long trunk, taproot systems, and their ecology is more influential than those of the shrubs and the herbs. So in the tropical world, for example, forest lands are valued because of the stock of numerous plant species that offer to mankind great economic values. Other than the economic values, we talk about the aesthetic values of plants, the forest ecosystem for beautification. We talk about the engineering value. We can also talk about the health or pharmaceutical values of plants or vegetation. Though the word vegetation can be used for plants, it can be used for floral components of the environment. These are the plants. Anything that has chlorophyll or chloroplast in the body is considered as a plant. Animal cells do not have chlorophyll. It's only plant cells that have chlorophyll. The big green pigment in plants that is the genesis of photosynthesis. I mean, that is the genesis of food production, like carbohydrates, proteins, fats, minerals, and other organic compounds. And this process can only take place in plants. So when we talk about photosynthesis, we only talk about plants as being the engine room of photosynthesis. So it is relevant to us because when we talk about distribution of plants on the Earth's surface, that it is the duty of geographers to determine their distribution, to determine their sizes, their number, and their ecosystem relationship with other components of the environment, even with the non-physical components. Forest areas do not only contain trees, but a number of plant species, such as the shrubs, herbs, creepers, lianas, epiphytes. Some other categories of plants or vegetation that culminate or that are subsumed under this forest land ecosystem include the hydrophytes, the xerophytes, the angiosperms, and the cryptogams. The hydrophytes are the water-loving plants. The xerophytes are drought-resistant plants, those that can live even without water. It's mostly common with regions of little or no water. The angiosperms are plants that bear fruits and seeds, and they must undergo the process of photosynthesis. And whereas the cryptogams are the non-seed-bearing plants. Among the category of plants we are talking about, essentially the angiosperms, which are the seed-bearing plants, are relevant to human existence, perhaps ecosystem development, because they are reproductive, because they produce seeds and fruits. So they are very reproductive. And we as geographers, we don't consider only the numerical value, but we consider the socioeconomic value as well as the ecological value. So under the ecological value, we talk about the biological value, the pharmaceutical values, the nutritive values of these crops to human existence. So they must be preserved. They must be conserved. That is in the absence of deforestation, in the absence of acute deforestation, in the absence of overgrazing, in the absence of overuse or misuse of the ecosystem. While, let's go further. While forest lands are classified based on a number of ecological factors, they are mostly determined by the prevailing climatic conditions of the environment, as well as the anthropogenic influences or factors of the environment. These anthropogenic influences involve farming activities, industrial development, urbanization, hunting activities, mining, and a host of others. These tend to disrupt the ecosystem in a number of ways. Disruption is injurious to the environment. Then the non-agricultural lands involve portions of the land that are used for other land uses other than agriculture or farming purposes. These include industrial land, commercial land, urbanization, tourism development, recreational activities for sports, for religious activities, and a host of others. In the industrialized countries of the world, such as in America, Europe, the USSR, a large proportion of land is devoted to agricultural development because of the large land masses. The allocation of land to non-agricultural development programs in the tropical and the less developed regions is lower than the proportion devoted to agriculture. Why? Purposely because the agricultural system in these advanced nations of the world is mechanized. So it requires a large proportion of land to be cultivated. So they require a large proportion of land for extensive cultivation. Then we have the barren and pasture land. The barren land is the type of land that is unproductive, especially when we talk of agricultural development and food production. Barren lands are unproductive. Such lands are lands that have been subjected to acute mining, overgrazing, or regular grazing. It is common in less developed nations of the world and also in snow-covered regions, the glaciated regions of the world. Most of the lands are barren and they tend to be unproductive. and fruitless. The main causes of barren land include deforestation in our tropical region, grazing, overuse or wrong use of the land, pollution, and possibly acidification of the land. The fifth one is fallow land. This fallow land we are talking about here means uncultivated land, especially the land that is left without planting seed for a period of time. At times, it can be advertently carried out, and it can be inadvertently carried out. In regions of serious farming activities, particularly in the rural communities, like in Nigeria, where more than 60% of the population is engaged in farming activities, they engage in fallowing, bush fallowing. It is another name for shifting cultivation. It's another name for bush fallowing. So the main reason for fallowing is to enable the land to regain its lost nutrient. They engage in that, and it is common. It is characterized with regions that experience high population growth. Nigeria is a region that is witnessing high population growth. So there's a tendency for agricultural land to be short. To be small, and the only possible way, the only natural way of regrowth, the return back of lost nutrients, is through bush fallowing, keeping the land for some time so that the land can regain its organic nutrients. And in the course of doing this, after a period of time, the vegetation in those regions, when they die, they decay and decompose into the soil. The litter that has decomposed into the soil forms organic nutrients. That is the beginning of organic matter formation and mineralization in plants. So the cause of humification and mineral decomposition in plants is attributed to the long period of fallow that is being practiced in a region. So the longer the fallow period, the more regeneration of lost nutrients, the more regrowth, the more return we have of the nutrients that were lost during acute farming activities. And it is being encouraged because it is a natural way of regaining lost nutrients. So in the tropics, for example, crops grown by shifting cultivation include beans, cassava, manioc esculentus, plantain, Musa indica, have bananas, maize, that is maize, pepper, rice, Oryza sativas, and the rest of them. These are common plants that are cultivated using this. So other plants can equally be cultivated. Of most recent is the involvement of farmers, particularly plantation farmers, who also indulge in the practice of this bush fallow to hasten the growth of their cash crops on the land. Now, let us briefly discuss the category of wastelands. Now, all the areas we have touched, the titles, the topics we have already discussed are relevant to the development of human society, as we said, and to the ecosystem as well. Because while we're talking about the physical structure, rural development of a region, we must also think about the biological, the biochemical, and the ecological growth of the land. We also shall look at the category of wastelands. There are about 6 wastelands under this discussion. These are the gullied or ravine lands, the salty land, the barren hilltops land, the snow-covered areas, undulating landscape, and the forest blank lands, which we may call the jungles. These categories of wasteland include the gullied or ravine lands, salty lands, the barren hill tops or land, the snow-covered areas, the undulating landscapes, and the forest blank lands. So let us first discuss the gully or ravine lands. These gully lands are areas of steep-sided cuttings caused by gully erosion that have resulted from the removal of vegetation from the top of the soil. Now, in most tropical regions of the world today, with the high intensity of deforestation and the continued growth of population and people venturing into agricultural practices and all other forms of deforestation, the incidence of soil erosion grows unabated. The high rate of deforestation in the tropical world has been a cause of concern to human life, particularly the vulnerable groups, because the cost of reparation is very, very high, especially for unaffected landscapes. So mitigation measures that can help to resuscitate or to regain land that have been wasted as a result of gully erosion include